The evening of March 15th started like any other for Colonel David Thompson. He had just left the Veterans Affairs ceremony in downtown Memphis, still wearing his army dress blues, his chest decorated with 30 years of earned respect. 3 Purple Hearts caught the streetlight as he walked toward his parked car. Behind him, the American flag hung motionless in the humid Tennessee air. What happened next would end 3 police careers in less than 48 hours. Officer Jake Martinez was the first to spot him. Sitting in his patrol car outside the community center, Martinez watched the tall black man in military uniform walking alone down Beale Street. Something about the scene didn't sit right with him. In his mind, real soldiers didn't walk around in dress uniform after dark. Real soldiers certainly didn't look like that. He radioed for backup. Within minutes, officers Bradley Webb and Marcus Chen arrived on scene. 3 squad cars now surrounded one man whose only crime was existing while black in a military uniform that took decades to earn. Colonel Thompson noticed the police presence but continued walking. He dealt with suspicious looks his entire military career. From hostile civilians in small towns to skeptical fellow officers who questioned whether he belonged in leadership. He'd learned to keep his head high and let his service record speak for itself. But tonight would be different. "Hey you," Martinez called out, stepping from his vehicle. "Stop right there." Thompson paused, turned, and waited. His training kicked in, remain calm, follow orders, de-escalate. The same principles that had kept him alive through 2 tours in Afghanistan now applied to a sidewalk in his own country. "Is there a problem, officer?" Thompson asked, his voice steady and respectful. Martinez approached with his hand resting on his weapon. "Where did you get that uniform, son?" The word son hung in the air like a slap. Colonel David Thompson was 52 years old. He had commanded hundreds of soldiers, both black and white. He had bled for his country and buried friends for the flag on his shoulder. And this 20-something cop with barely 5 years on the force had just called him son. To understand the magnitude of what was about to unfold, you need to know who Colonel David Thompson really was. Born in rural Mississippi in 1971, Thompson had enlisted in the Army at 18 to escape poverty and build a future his sharecropper father never could have imagined. While other kids his age were partying through college, Thompson was earning his stripes in basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia. His rise through the ranks was nothing short of extraordinary. By 25, he was a staff sergeant, leading men twice his age through combat operations in Iraq. By 30, he had completed officer candidate school and earned his commission as a 2nd lieutenant. By 40, he was a major commanding an entire battalion. But it was his actions in Kandahar province that truly defined his legacy. During a routine patrol in 2018, Thompson's convoy came under heavy fire from Taliban insurgents positioned in a village compound. With 3 soldiers wounded and trapped under enemy fire, Thompson made a decision that would earn him his 3rd Purple Heart and his first Medal of Honor recommendation. He crawled through 200 yards of open ground under machine gun fire to reach his trapped men. One by one, he dragged them to safety, taking shrapnel in his shoulder and leg. When the smoke cleared, 3 American soldiers were alive because David Thompson had risked everything to save them. The ceremony he just left was the final step in his Medal of Honor process. In 6 weeks, he would stand in the Rose Garden with the President of the United States, receiving the nation's highest military decoration. But tonight, on a Memphis sidewalk, none of that mattered to the 3 officers now treating him like a suspect. Officer Martinez was a different story entirely. 5 years out of the police academy, he joined the force with good intentions, but quickly became infected by the cynicism and prejudice that plagued the department. His training officer had taught him to see threats everywhere, especially in young black men who didn't belong. In certain neighborhoods, the irony was suffocating. Martinez, whose grandfather had immigrated from Mexico and faced his own discrimination, now wielded that same prejudice against others. Fear had transformed him from protector to predator. Officer Webb, the senior man on scene, should have known better. 15 years on the force had given him enough experience to recognize the difference between a real threat and racial profiling. But Webb had grown comfortable with the unspoken rules of police brotherhood: back up your fellow officers, ask questions later. Officer Chen was the youngest, barely 2 years on the job. Fresh from the academy, he still believed in justice and protecting the innocent. But peer pressure and the desire to fit in had already begun corrupting his moral compass. Tonight would be his first real test of character. The community center where Thompson had just attended the ceremony was located in a predominantly black neighborhood that had seen significant gentrification over the past decade. Old soul food restaurants now sat next to trendy coffee shops. Historic homes that had housed civil rights leaders were being bought and renovated by young white professionals. This cultural tension had put the police department on edge. They'd received complaints from newer residents about suspicious activity, which usually meant black people existing in their own neighborhood. The department's response had been increased patrols and a more aggressive approach to maintaining order. Colonel Thompson was simply the wrong man in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or perhaps, given what was about to unfold, he was exactly the right man to expose a system that desperately needed accountability. As Martinez approached with growing aggression, Thompson's military training assessed the situation. 3 officers, hands near weapons, defensive posture, suggesting they viewed him as a threat. Standard de-escalation protocol would be to comply with their requests while maintaining dignity and documenting everything for later complaint if necessary. What Thompson couldn't have predicted was that these officers were about to make the costliest mistake of their careers. The community center behind them was emptying out, with other veterans and their families heading to their cars. Several people noticed the police presence, but assumed it was routine security. A few pulled out phones, thinking they might catch something worth posting on social media. They had no idea they were about to witness a moment that would spark outrage across the nation and cost 3 men their livelihoods. This stage was set. A decorated war hero in full military dress, 3 police officers blinded by prejudice, and a handful of witnesses with cameras ready to document whatever happened next. In the distance, traffic moved normally along the main thoroughfare. The city of Memphis continued its evening rhythm, unaware that on this quiet side street, decades of systemic racism were about to collide with military honor in the most explosive way possible. "I asked you a question," Martinez repeated, his voice growing more aggressive. "Where did you get that uniform?" Colonel Thompson's jaw tightened, but his response remained measured. "I earned this uniform through 30 years of military service, officer. Is there a specific reason you've stopped me? Don't get smart with me." Martinez shot back, now standing just feet away. "We've had reports of someone impersonating military personnel in this area." This was a lie. There had been no such reports. Officer Webb moved to Thompson's left flank while Chen positioned himself to the right. The formation was tactical, designed to prevent escape and intimidate the subject. It was also completely unnecessary for a simple identification check. Thompson recognized the formation immediately. He'd used similar tactics when detaining suspected insurgents in combat zones. The fact that these officers were treating him, a decorated American soldier on American soil, like an enemy combatant, sent ice through his veins. "Officers, I'm happy to provide identification," Thompson said calmly, slowly reaching toward his wallet. "I have my military ID, driver's license, and—" "Stop right there," Martinez shouted, his hand moving to his weapon. Don't move." The sudden escalation caused several veterans exiting the community center to stop and stare. Among them was Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, who had served under Thompson's command in Afghanistan. She immediately recognized her former colonel and couldn't believe what she was witnessing. She pulled out her phone and started recording. "Sir, I need you to put your hands behind your head," Martinez commanded, his voice carrying the authority he thought his badge provided. Thompson's eyes flashed with something between anger and disbelief. "Officer, I am Colonel David Thompson, United States Army. I've just left a veterans ceremony and I'm walking to my vehicle. I have done nothing illegal. I don't care if you're General Patton." Webb interjected, finally speaking up. "You're gonna do what we tell you to do." The casual dismissal of his rank, his service, his very identity as an American soldier hit Thompson like a physical blow. But it was Chen's nervous laughter that really stung. "Hands behind your head now," Martinez repeated. Thompson slowly complied, his military bearing never wavering despite the humiliation burning in his chest. As his hands went up, the fluorescent streetlight caught his decorations more clearly. 3 purple hearts, a bronze star, combat ribbons that told the story of a man who had bled for his country. Martinez saw the medals and felt a flicker of doubt. But he was too committed to back down now. In his mind, admitting he was wrong would be worse than potentially being wrong. "Turn around," Webb ordered. As Thompson turned, Rodriguez's phone captured the full scope of his decorations. Other veterans began gathering, some recording, others calling out in recognition. "That's Colonel Thompson." Someone shouted from the crowd, "He's a war hero." Another voice added. Martinez's confidence began to waver, but Webb pushed forward. "Everyone step back. This is police business." The handcuffs came out. The metallic click, as they locked around Thompson's wrists, was audible in the tense silence. 30 years of service, countless lives saved, a bronze star with valor, 3 purple hearts, none of it mattered to the cold steel now cutting into his skin. "This is a mistake," Thompson said quietly, his voice heavy with controlled emotion. "I am a United States Army colonel. I command the 173rd Airborne Brigade. I have served this country for 30 years. Yeah, and I'm the president," Martinez sneered, pushing Thompson toward the patrol car. That's when Rodriguez stepped forward, her phone still recording. "Officers, that really is Colonel Thompson. He's my commanding officer. I served under him in Afghanistan." Webb turned on her aggressively. "Ma'am, step back or you'll be arrested too." "For what?" Rodriguez shot back. "For telling you you're handcuffing a war hero." More veterans began speaking up, their voices growing louder. The crowd was getting restless, and Chen started looking nervous. This wasn't how simple stops were supposed to go. Martinez shoved Thompson against the patrol car to search him, his hands rough and deliberately demeaning. He pulled out Thompson's wallet, flipped it open, and found exactly what he should have expected: a military ID identifying David Thompson as a full colonel, United States Army. For a moment, Martinez stared at the ID. The photo matched. The rank was clearly printed. Everything about it appeared legitimate. But admitting he was wrong now would mean acknowledging he had just handcuffed and humiliated a superior officer in the United States military. It would mean facing the consequences of his prejudice and poor judgment. So Martinez made the worst decision of his career. "Anyone can get a fake ID," he announced loudly, holding up Thompson's military identification. "This proves nothing." The crowd erupted. "Are you serious?" Rodriguez shouted, her phone capturing Martinez's dismissal of official military identification. "That's a real military ID." Other veterans began yelling, their anger palpable. These were men and women who had served alongside Thompson, who knew his reputation, who had witnessed his courage under fire. Webb tried to control the situation. "Everyone calm down. We're just doing our job. Your job is to protect and serve." An older veteran called out, "Not humiliate war heroes." Thompson remained pressed against the patrol car, his dignity intact despite the circumstances. He could feel the anger of his fellow veterans, could hear their outrage on his behalf. But he also knew that any escalation could lead to violence, and he wouldn't be responsible for that. Officers, he said quietly, his voice carrying the authority of 3 decades of military leadership, I'm going to make this very simple for you. In my pocket is my cell phone. I'm going to give you one number to call. When you speak to the person who answers, this situation will be resolved immediately. Martinez laughed mockingly. What, your dealer, your baby mama? Thompson's eyes met his directly. My commanding officer. Something in Thompson's tone finally penetrated Martinez's arrogance. There was no pleading, no desperation. Just the quiet confidence of a man who knew that one phone call would change everything. Chen, the youngest officer, was studying the military ID more carefully. The security features were clearly authentic. The identification number, when he ran it through his computer, came back as active military personnel, full colonel rank. Hey, Martinez, Chen said nervously, I think we might want to shut up. Webb cut him off. We finish what we started. But Thompson was already speaking again. The number is 202-555-0147. That's the direct line to Major General Patricia Williams, Commanding General 18th Airborne Corps. She's expecting my call tonight because I'm briefing her on tomorrow's Medal of Honor ceremony preparation. The crowd fell silent. Martinez felt his mouth go dry. Medal of Honor ceremony. Rodriguez was still recording, and now she was live, streaming to her Facebook page. Y'all, they got Colonel Thompson in handcuffs. This is insane. He's about to receive the Medal of Honor, and these cops think he's fake. The live stream was being shared rapidly. Comments were pouring in from veterans across the country who recognized Thompson's name and reputation. Chen looked at his computer screen again. The ID check was showing not just active military status, but a security classification that indicated this person had Pentagon level clearance. Martinez, Chen whispered urgently, we need to make that phone call, now. But Martinez was trapped by his own ego and prejudice. Making the call would prove he was wrong. It would expose his assumptions, his biases, his complete failure to recognize that heroism comes in all colors. Instead, he doubled down. I don't care who he claims to know, Martinez announced. He's coming with us until we sort this out. That's when Thompson played his final card, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez. He called out to his former subordinate, please call General Williams yourself. Tell her what's happening here. Tell her that 3 police officers have arrested Colonel David Thompson on suspicion of impersonating a military officer. Rodriguez nodded immediately and started dialing. Martinez realized he had lost control of the situation completely, but it was too late to back down now. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez's call to Major General Patricia Williams lasted exactly 47 seconds. Ma'am, this is Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, 173rd Airborne. I'm sorry to call so late, but Colonel Thompson has been arrested by Memphis police officers who think he's impersonating military personnel. There was a pause on the other end of the line that lasted long enough for Rodriguez to wonder if the call had dropped. Then, what did you just say? Rodriguez repeated the situation, her voice growing stronger as she described the scene unfolding in front of her. 3 officers, handcuffs, accusations of wearing a fake uniform, dismissal of official military ID. Put one of those officers on the phone, General Williams ordered, her voice carrying the kind of authority that had commanded respect in boardrooms and battlefields across 4 continents. Now, Rodriguez approached Webb, who had emerged as the senior officer on scene. Sir, Major General Williams would like to speak with you. Webb looked at the phone like it might explode. Who? Major General Patricia Williams, Commanding General, 18th Airborne Corps. Rodriguez repeated clearly, She outranks everyone within about 100 miles of here. Martinez overheard and felt his stomach drop. He knew enough about military hierarchy to understand that a major general wasn't someone you ignored. But taking the phone would mean acknowledging they might have made a mistake. This could be anyone, Webb said weakly, but his confidence was clearly shaken. Rodriguez put the phone on speaker. This is Major General Williams. I want to speak to whoever is in charge of this cluster, Buck, immediately. The profanity from a general officer caused several people in the crowd to gasp. In military culture, when a general starts swearing, careers are about to end. Webb reluctantly took the phone. This is Officer Webb, Memphis Police Department. Officer Webb, this is Major General Patricia Williams, United States Army. The man you have in handcuffs is Colonel David Thompson, one of the most decorated officers in the United States military. He is scheduled to receive the Medal of Honor from the President of the United States in exactly 38 days. Are you telling me that you believe he is impersonating a military officer? Webb's face went pale. The entire crowd could hear every word. Ma'am, we were responding to reports of suspicious activity. What reports? General Williams cut him off. What specific reports of suspicious activity? Webb looked to Martinez for help, but Martinez was staring at the ground, finally understanding the magnitude of their mistake. There were concerns about someone in military uniform. Officer Webb, let me make this very simple for you. You are currently detaining a man who has bled for his country in 3 separate combat deployments, a man who saved the lives of 17 American soldiers under enemy fire, a man who has earned the respect of every general officer in the United States Army. What you are doing right now is not just illegal, it's a disgrace. The live stream on Rodriguez's Facebook page had been shared over 500 times in the past 10 minutes. Comments were pouring in from veterans, active duty military, and civilians who couldn't believe what they were witnessing. General, how do we verify? Webb began. You don't verify anything, Williams interrupted. You uncuff Colonel Thompson immediately. You apologize for your incompetence, and you pray he doesn't file the federal civil rights lawsuit that he would be completely justified in pursuing. But General Williams was just getting started. Furthermore, Officer Webb, I want you to understand something very clearly. Within the next hour, I will be speaking to the Memphis police chief, the mayor of Memphis, the FBI field office supervisor, and my personal friend, Congressman Bradley, who sits on the House Armed Services Committee. This incident will be investigated at the federal level. Webb's hands were shaking as he held the phone. Around him, the crowd of veterans was growing larger as word spread through social media. Cars were stopping. People were getting out to witness what was happening. Now uncuff my officer, Williams ordered, immediately. Webb looked at Martinez and Chen, both of whom were staring at him with expressions of pure terror. They finally understood that they hadn't just made a mistake, they had created a national incident. Martinez slowly approached Thompson with the handcuff keys. As the metal fell away from Thompson's wrists, the crowd began to applaud. Some veterans were saluting. Others were openly weeping at the injustice they had witnessed. Thompson rubbed his wrists where the cuffs had cut into his skin. He turned to face the 3 officers, his dignity intact despite everything they had put him through. Officers, he said quietly, I hope you learned something from this. But the night was far from over. Rodriguez was still live streaming, and her viewer count had reached over 2,000 people. Comments were being shared on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Colonel Thompson was starting to trend. Local news crews monitoring police scanners and social media were already dispatching reporters to the scene. General Williams wasn't finished with Officer Webb. I want your supervisor on this phone in the next 5 minutes, she ordered. I want to know what kind of training your department provides that leads to war heroes being treated like criminals. Webb radioed his sergeant, who was at the station dealing with paperwork from an earlier domestic disturbance call. Sarge, I need you down at the community center on Beale Street. We have a Situation: Sergeant Mike Patterson had been on the force for 22 years. He'd seen everything from gang violence to political corruption. But when he arrived at the scene and saw a decorated Army colonel surrounded by angry veterans while his officers stood looking like they wanted to disappear into the pavement, he knew this was different. Patterson approached Thompson first. "Sir, I'm Sergeant Patterson. I want to apologize for whatever happened here tonight." Thompson studied the older officer, recognizing someone with enough experience to understand the gravity of the situation. "Sergeant, your officers accused me of impersonating a military officer, handcuffed me, and dismissed my military identification as fake." Patterson closed his eyes for a moment. In his 22 years, he'd never dealt with anything this catastrophic. "Sir, on behalf of the Memphis Police Department, I sincerely apologize. This should never have happened. But apologies weren't going to fix this." The live stream had now been viewed by over 10,000 people. News outlets were picking up the story. The Memphis Police Department's phone lines were being flooded with calls from veterans organizations, civil rights groups, and media outlets demanding answers. At 9:47 p.m., exactly 2 hours after the initial stop, Channel 7 News arrived with a full camera crew. Reporter Janet Morrison, a veteran journalist who specialized in civil rights stories, immediately recognized the significance of what had happened. "Colonel Thompson," she called out, "would you be willing to make a statement?" Thompson looked at the camera, then at the three officers who had humiliated him, then at the crowd of veterans who had rallied to his defense. "I've spent 30 years serving this country," he said simply. "I've been shot at by enemies of America in Afghanistan and Iraq, but I never expected to be treated like an enemy by police officers in Memphis, Tennessee." The statement was measured, dignified, and devastating. Morrison turned her attention to the officers. "Officers, would you like to comment on why you arrested a decorated war hero?" Martinez, Webb, and Chen stood silent, finally understanding that anything they said would only make things worse. But the damage was already done. By 10:15 p.m., the story was on CNN website. By 10:30, it had been picked up by Fox News, MSNBC, and the Associated Press. By 11:00 p.m., #Colonel Thompson was trending nationally on Twitter. The Memphis police chief's phone rang at 11:23 p.m. It was the mayor. "Chief Morrison, please tell me you have a good explanation for why our officers just arrested a Medal of Honor recipient." Chief Morrison, who had been blissfully unaware of the incident until the mayor's call, felt his career flash before his eyes. "Medal of Honor recipient, turn on the news," the mayor said grimly, "then call me back with a plan for fixing this disaster." At the same time, Officer Martinez was sitting in his patrol car, staring at his phone as notification after notification popped up. The live stream of his encounter with Thompson had been shared thousands of times. His face was clearly visible. His name was being mentioned in comments and posts. His wife texted him, "Jake, people are calling you a racist on Facebook." What happened? Webb was having similar realizations as friends and family members reached out, having seen him on the viral videos. The internet had identified all three officers within hours. Chen, the youngest, was already composing his resignation letter in his head. But the biggest shock was yet to come. At 11:47 p.m., Colonel Thompson's phone rang. The caller ID showed a Washington, D.C. number. "Colonel Thompson, this is General Mark Patterson, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I've been briefed on tonight's incident. Are you all right?" The Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest-ranking military officer in the United States, calling to check on Thompson's welfare. "Yes, sir, I'm fine, General." "Colonel, I want you to know that this incident has been brought to the attention of the Secretary of Defense and the President's staff. This will not stand. We take care of our own." As Thompson spoke with the nation's top military officer, the three police officers who had arrested him were beginning to understand that they hadn't just made a career mistake. They had created a national scandal that would follow them for the rest of their lives. Ending/climax/CTA 525 words. The consequences came swift and merciless. By 6:00 a.m. the next morning, the Memphis Police Department had received over 3,000 calls demanding justice. The department's Facebook page was flooded with angry comments from veterans, civil rights advocates, and civilians who couldn't believe what they had witnessed. Chief Morrison held a press conference at 8:00 a.m. The actions of our officers last night do not represent the values of the Memphis Police Department. He announced to a room packed with reporters, "We have launched a full internal investigation, and appropriate disciplinary action will be taken." But the public wasn't interested in investigations or appropriate action. They wanted accountability. Officer Martinez was the first to fall. By 10:00 a.m., his social media history had been thoroughly investigated by internet detectives who discovered a pattern of racially insensitive posts and comments. Screenshots were shared thousands of times, painting a clear picture of his mindset. Internal Affairs called him in at noon. By 2:00 p.m., he was cleaning out his locker. Webb lasted until Thursday. 15 years of service ended when bodycam footage revealed that he had used similar aggressive tactics with other black citizens during routine stops. The pattern was undeniable. Chen, the youngest, submitted his resignation before he could be fired. His letter to the chief was leaked to the media. "I became a police officer to serve and protect my community. What I participated in on March 15th was neither service nor protection. It was prejudice, plain and simple." But the story didn't end with 3 terminated careers. The incident sparked a federal investigation into the Memphis Police Department's training practices and use of force policies. The Department of Justice announced a comprehensive review of the department's interactions with minority communities. Colonel Thompson, meanwhile, received his Medal of Honor on schedule 6 weeks later. President Biden mentioned the incident during the ceremony, saying, "Colonel Thompson's grace under pressure that night in Memphis showed the same courage he displayed on the battlefields of Afghanistan." The 3 officers faced federal civil rights charges. Martinez was convicted and sentenced to 2 years in prison. Webb received 18 months. Chen, who cooperated fully with investigators and showed genuine remorse, received probation and community service. The Memphis Police Department implemented mandatory bias training, new accountability measures, and a citizen oversight board with significant veteran representation. Colonel Thompson never filed the civil rights lawsuit that everyone expected. Instead, he established a foundation to improve police-community relations, with a focus on educating officers about military service and veteran issues. "Revenge isn't justice," he said during a later interview. "Justice is making sure this never happens to another veteran, another person of color, another American citizen who deserves dignity and respect." 3 careers destroyed, a department reformed, a nation reminded that prejudice always carries a price. The viral video of that night has been viewed over 50 million times, but the real impact wasn't measured in views or shares. It was measured in change. If you believe every uniform deserves respect regardless of who's wearing it, share this story. If you think prejudice should have consequences, comment justice below. And if you've ever been judged by your appearance instead of your character, know that Colonel Thompson's courage that night was for all of us. Because sometimes one phone call is all it takes to prove that justice isn't just an ideal, it's a promise that we must all work to keep.